So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Youth Town Hall. My name is Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, and I'm the Assembly member from the 16th Assembly District, which spans from La Marinda to Livermore and Dublin and Pleasanton in Alameda County. Thank you to all of you for taking the time to join us for this virtual town hall and learn more about what's happening in our state legislature, especially as it relates to our local community. And I'm so excited to be here with some awesome folks to talk about some of my work in the legislature and answer questions that have been submitted by youth in our own district. I'll be joined today by one of my fantastic spring 2022 interns, Seena Farhadi. Seena is currently a senior at Northgate High School and will be attending UC Berkeley in the fall to pursue his interest in public policy. Not only has he been a star intern, but he was the recipient of the 2021 Yours Humanely Children Have the Power to Empower Award and the 2022 Youth Hall of Fame Award by the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors at their 2022 Cesar Chavez celebration. So Seena has been incredibly involved in our community. So I'll tell you a little bit about what he's done. He's the chair of the Walnut Creek Youth Commission. He's the president of Genev's Mount Diablo Acalanes chapter and the founder and director of Learning and Enrichment and Assistance Program, or LEAP, where he is working to address educational disparities in his school district. Obviously, he's very busy. And so I want to thank him for taking the time to put this together and facilitate tonight's town hall. I'll also be joined by one of my fantastic incoming summer 2022 externs, Juliet Becker. Juliet is currently a student at Acalanes High School, where she is an online features editor for the Acalanes Blueprint. She is the founder and president of the French Club and co-founder and secretary of the TEDx Club. Thank you both so much for being here and helping to ask the questions for your fellow youth. I really appreciate it. And later on, we will have a couple of other wonderful students join us from the district to ask some questions as well. So I wanted to hold this town hall to help close out our school year and address some of the most pressing questions from the youth in our district. I was just at one of our local high schools last week, and we had an amazing conversation about the issues that are most pressing for all of you. And so it's fun to be with more of you virtually tonight. And I know that you're coming on summer break, so I want to tell you to enjoy that. But first, let's start this conversation and learn some more before summer hits us. So before we get into the question and answer part of the town hall, I want to briefly touch upon some of the legislation that I'm moving in areas that I know our youth are incredibly passionate about and ask me about all the time. So just so you know a little bit about me, I'm both an attorney, but also the mother of 3 young children. And so making sure that youth are in an environment that helps foster their personal growth is of huge importance to me. And I know that there are so many issues that are of concern to all of you: climate change, struggles with mental health, and gun violence prevention, just to name a few. I'm also the chair of the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. And one of my top priorities is to preserve biodiversity and to fight climate change. And I have to say, I've been incredibly impressed by your generation and how plugged in you are to our ecology, our climate, and all that we need to do to preserve it for future generations. So I have a bill in this space that I want to tell you about. It's Assembly Bill 2146, and it is my bill focused on saving the bees. The bill would ban the use of the top 5 neonicotinoids, which is a type of pesticide that is incredibly harmful to bees, but also to humans, in non-agricultural settings. And part of the reason we're focusing on this is that many of you may have known that we lost 40% of our bee colonies just last year. It was one of the worst years on record, and there is a huge body of research that links negative health impacts and decline in the pollinator populations to use of these pesticides that we're trying to ban. Many of you may not know that these are probably being used in your own yards, at your own homes, and it is negatively impacting our bee population, which affects both our climate and our ability to have biodiversity, but also our food sources. We are obviously a huge agricultural state. We grow a lot of food for the country and the world. And in order to preserve the food that we grow and to ensure that the prices don't go up, we need to make sure we have healthy bee populations. The European Union and New Jersey have already banned the use of these pesticides, and it's time that California catches up. Another one of the bills that I think would touch upon something all of you care about is Assembly Bill 2658. This is a bill focused on juvenile justice. So these are youth who are in our juvenile justice system. They're in our criminal system, and they many of our youth get ankle monitoring. So that little monitor that goes around your leg that says that you need to be home and at school, and that's it, and we're going to track you. And currently, if you're an adult and you're wearing one of those ankle monitors, you get a day of credit for your incarceration for every day you wear the monitor. But if you're a juvenile, if you're a youth, you get no credit, and you can have the ankle monitor on indefinitely. So we are going to make sure the youth are treated as well as adults are in the system. I know it's crazy I'm saying that because it's usually not the case that adults are treated better than youth, but in this instance they are. So we're going to make sure that there's equal treatment and credits are given. We're also going to make sure there's judicial review so that those ankle monitors aren't left on indefinitely. We're also going to protect youth from eavesdropping, which is happening through the modern technology in these ankle monitors. So that's something we're doing to better protect our youth that are in our criminal justice system. Another bill I have that touches on something that I know a lot of you see in your own communities and your own schools, especially at this time, is focused on the rising hate we're seeing in our own communities. So Assembly Bill 2282 aims to strengthen and equalize penalties for the use of terror symbols. So people use symbols such as a noose, a burning cross, or a swastika to terrorize the community. And we want to make sure that these are treated equally across the code. Currently, they're not. Nooses are actually treated as a lesser offense than the others, which to me is racist. I think they should all be treated equally. And so we're going to make sure they are, but also we're going to extend out the locations where they each are not allowed. Currently, you can use some of those in a school and others you can't. And so we're going to make sure that they're all equalized in their settings and their penalties and in places where it really does terrorize our communities. And that's really critical because we know that the statistics show that hate crimes are surging to the highest level in 12 years, with over 10,000 individuals reporting hate crimes just this year alone. So this is horrifying and we need to do more to take action here at the state level. On gun violence prevention, I introduced AB 2571. Currently in California, youth are not allowed to own firearms. We don't sell firearms to children. However, the firearm manufacturers are allowed to advertise to children. And we want to make sure that just like tobacco products are not targeted to children, neither are firearms. And so we're going to ban the marketing by these gun manufacturers to our youngest Californians, which is really critical in trying to continue to protect our youth from gun violence. And I would just want to give a shout out to our governor who is sponsoring that bill and has been an incredible partner in gun violence prevention here in our community and state. A little bit about what we're doing for your schools. Each of you has had the opportunity to learn in our incredible schools here in Assembly District 16, and we want to make sure that we continue to provide the type of education that each of you needs to be prepared for the future that you'll face. So we're really looking at how we can continue to increase funding for our schools to make sure that we can reduce class sizes and provide quality educational opportunities for every single youth. So we're going to see some increased funding for our schools. Lastly, we're working really hard in my office on mental health care. We're working to set up a system for those in mental health crisis outside of 911. So you're not calling the police when you're in crisis, but instead you're calling professionals who are there to care for you in a healthcare setting. So I'm continuing to look at how we can better serve those who need mental health support here in California. And we're going to invest in that program and make sure that it's set up for the future generations to get better service than we have today. So now we're going to move to my favorite part. I don't like to talk, so we're going to turn it over to our wonderful sidekicks in this presentation and go to the questions that each of you have. So Seena, take it over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Assembly Member. This has truly been an incredible opportunity setting this up, and spring intern, that entire session was so fun. And especially if I'm staying local at UC Berkeley, I think I'll have a chance to come back and work with you once again. So I'm super excited for the future.
And
so
congratulations on that. The last time we talked, you'd just gotten into your first college.
I know, and we've come far. So yeah, so it's exciting. So our first question is going to be from Chris, who's a senior at Miramani. And his question is, what's the state doing to fight mental health issues that students are dealing with in schools?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So we're doing quite a few things. We really know that our youth are struggling with mental health in ways that they didn't before the pandemic. Although I would say that there was still a huge need for better mental health systems for our youth even before the pandemic. And so we've done a couple things. One is funded, you probably are seeing more counselors in your schools than you were prior to the pandemic, and that's through funding. So making sure that we have targeted resources for our schools to hire and provide counseling right in your school district, so it's easily accessible to each and every one of you, which is really, really critical. I mentioned AB 988, which is the effort I have to take mental health crisis out of the 911 system. Through that work, we're really focused on youth and how each and every one of you will access support if you need it. We know that kids your age don't pick up the phone and talk to people the way my generation does. You're much more likely to use texting and messaging to communicate. And so as we're setting up this new system of mental health crisis support here in California, we're making sure it's accessible to our youth through texting and messaging. We know that that's critical to providing avenues in for youth who need it. And so again, looking at the research, knowing how youth will access support, be it at their school or through these systems, we're doing everything we can to provide the support that youth need to have the mental health care that they need, because it is just healthcare, and everyone who needs it should have the support to be healthy and thriving. And I hope every one of our youth know that if they need to reach out for help, that it's there for them and there's no reason not to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know that your office is really focusing on prioritizing mental health, and recently kind of having mental health be an excused absence day. Small things like that are really making a change. So a different question from Krishna, who's a student at Cal High in San Ramon. She reached out to us and she asked, she recently committed to the University of Nevada, Reno, where she'll be studying economics and possibly political science. But ultimately, she plans to become an immigration lawyer at law school. And she was wondering if you had any advice through your background in law school, and any tips that you could give her.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Krishna. It's so exciting for all of you to be off to these incredible educational opportunities. I have to say that I loved college and law school. I'm a nerd. I think I would have stayed in school forever if I could, which actually might be why I went back to becoming a law professor after practicing for a few years. So I would say the advice that I give to youth always is I never thought I would be a politician or an elected official. It wasn't in my long-term plans, but I'm here because I always followed my passion and what I wanted to do and what I loved. And I went to college not knowing what I would major in, and fell in love with the study of psychology. And so I studied it. And then I fell in love with the law. And so I went to law school. And I ended up in public service because I wanted to change the law and help people in this way. And in every step, doing what I loved and what I'm passionate about has made me successful, both personally satisfied, but also in the work I've done to really make change and make a difference and feel satisfied in that way. So I think my biggest tip for you is do what you love and do what you're passionate about. And I believe that if you do that, you will be successful and happy, both of which are so incredibly important. But I love the law. So I think that if you want to engage, please do. We need more incredible people engaging in law and policy. And so the more of you that want to do it, I invite you to join me.
Hi, Assemblymember. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for my externship this summer. Our next question is from Shruti from Doherty High School. And she wants to know, what are some of the day-to-day challenges that you face as a representative?
That's a tough one. So I love my job. I have to say, I love working with these incredible interns that you're getting to meet virtually. And if any of you are interested, our internship is open. We'll be open again in the fall. Our summer is full, but we do fall and spring internships as well as summer. So I think that the challenge I face the most is a sense of overwhelm, to be frank with you, about what we need to do to get the world where it needs to be for each and every one of you. Climate change is something that I focus a lot on, and it's a really big problem that needs a lot of work. I spend a lot of my time working on reproductive health care, and right now we're in a moment of crisis, right? How can I do everything that needs to be done right now on these issues that I care so deeply about? And there are lives on the line in every one of these instances. And so, I think it's really challenging to not be able to do everything all at once. But we do as much as we can. And that is actually, going back to where I started with this, because I have incredible staff that work with me, both in the Capitol and here in the district, who help me to achieve all the goals we have, whether it be preserving open space here in the district to help fight climate change or moving incredible legislation in the Capitol. And my team is so critical to that work, and our interns are also really an important part of that. And so I couldn't do it without all of them, but it really is my biggest challenge, is that I want to do more than I'll ever be able to do in the 12 years that I have to serve you.
All right, that does sound a bit overwhelming, but also very fulfilling. You mentioned reproductive health care, and that leads into our next question from Sabrina from Dublin High School. She asked, what's your take on the Roe v. Wade draft?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And I have to say, to each of you, as a woman who was born into a world where Roe v. Wade was law, and had my children in a world where my reproductive healthcare choices were my own. Those decisions were made in the privacy of my OBGYN's office with me and my partner, my husband. It's really hard for me that you are going to live in a different world than I did. And so I think it's important that you, in your question, you called it the Roe v. Wade draft. It's important for us to understand first and foremost that what we saw last week is not law, and it may not become law. In order for Justice Alito to have that opinion become law, he needs to have many justices agree with him on the language in that opinion. And we don't know if that's the case yet. We will know in June what will actually become law. It looks like enough justices voted to overturn Roe v. Wade that will be the outcome of the case, but it really is critical, the confines of the decision and whether it goes as far as he said or not. And so that is yet to come, and we will know a lot more in June when we see the opinion. But it's devastating to me that we're overturning what I believe to be a fundamental right, which is that right to privacy, a right to decide for yourself what your future holds, and to make healthcare decisions in the privacy of your home or your doctor's office without any interference from the government. And so we're working incredibly hard here in California to ensure that that right is consistently maintained in California for every California woman, and for anyone who needs to come here. We don't want women to have to come here to get healthcare, but if they do, we're going to be a place where they can receive comprehensive reproductive healthcare, including abortion. But we'll know more about what the future holds in June. In the meantime, we're working hard on what the future here in California will look like, and it won't change.
Thank you, Assemblymember, for all your extremely thoughtful answers. And as you mentioned, we now have a couple of high school students who are going to come and ask a few questions of their own. Because as a part of my internship, I reached out to all the high schools in the district, and to see if anyone would be interested to coming and talking to you and asking questions. And we heard back from a couple who offered up, and now they are here and ready to talk to you. So first, we have Mikail, who's a junior from Pleasanton. And we also have Hari, who's a student from Walnut Creek. So they both have questions for you, and I think we're going to start with Mikail.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mikail. Thank you, Assemblymember, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. My question is, how do you decide which issues take priority over one another? I see that you have released district and statewide policies, including health, gender equality, wildfire protection, gun safety, and more. You identify those as priorities. What makes a policy priority to you?
Yeah, I mean, when asked what the biggest challenge was, I think it sort of comes back to your question, Mikail, which is, how do I prioritize what to do, right? So the rules of our House are that we may carry 50 pieces of legislation over the 2-year legislative cycle. I don't carry that many. That's too many, but that's the maximum. And so when making the decision about what policy we will move, we have to prioritize things. Like I said, we can't do everything as much as we'd like to. And sometimes there are certain things we decide, okay, we're not going to do it this year, we're going to do it next year. And for example, the bee pollinator bill that I talked about at the beginning, we introduced that bill last year, but knowing what was happening in the Department of Pesticide Regulation, we decided to wait to move that bill until this year. So sometimes it's, what do we want to introduce and when do we want to introduce it? But it's hard to decide what to prioritize. And a lot of it is just based on the values that I hold and that this district holds, and what each and every one of my constituents wants me to focus on. And I know that one of the top priorities of this district is the environment, is climate change. So we always have our eye on ensuring we're doing our part to move the ball forward in fighting climate change and making sure that we're preparing California for the future. And then, similarly, people care deeply about access to healthcare and reproductive healthcare here. People care deeply about gun violence prevention and the safety of our communities. So that's something we always work on. Education. Many of us here are here because of our incredible schools, right? And that each of you have had an opportunity to be a part of. And so we always have our eye on improving access to and the quality of our educational system. And all of that is grounded in, again, just values, the values I hold, the values this district holds, and how we need to move California forward for each and every one of you. And when something comes up that we think is pressing, that's what we prioritize. And so you'll see that in the bill package. As I said, climate change. This year, we're doing a bill on abortion because we knew it was going to be, Roe v. Wade was likely to be overturned this year. And so that was pressing and a priority for this community. But, we span the gamut. We did a bill last year focused on consumer protections that were really unique to the pandemic. We knew people were having problems accessing capital, people who were living paycheck to paycheck. And so we did a consumer protection bill focused on that. And again, it was timely, it was important, something this community cares about. We did a bill last year on small businesses, helping small businesses with litigation issues. We knew small businesses were struggling during the pandemic, and that's a priority. And they really are the heart and soul of our communities. So again, it's what matters to us, where are our values, and what is needed right now, because we have to prioritize.
Got it. Thank you, Assembly Member.
Thank you. And thanks for being here, Mikail.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Fari. Thank you for having me, Assembly Member. My question is, what are your thoughts on the current school curriculum? Do you see any gaps, and should anything be changed?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So before I became a legislator, I never planned to be a politician, but I was really engaged in my community in ways that mattered to me and that I thought needed work. And actually, one of the things that I was most engaged in was working in our local schools. And I worked on the creation of a STEM education program here, a maker education program. And part of why I was doing that is the world has changed since even I entered the workforce. The way people engage and they work in teams is different. We used to have, where I worked, we had our own office and we did our own thing. And now the world is much more collaborative and much more open. And the way y'all need to be prepared for the jobs you're going to face looks different. And so we need to not just be teaching you traditional curriculum, we need to be teaching you that teamwork, that ability to collaborate, so you're prepared for the work you're going to face. And so one of my priorities was to create opportunities, even in our elementary schools, for kids to start working in teams and learning that skill set at a young age, because it's so, so critical. So I do think we need to continue to navigate what the future holds and how your education prepares you for it in those really important ways. And we're seeing that in every one of your schools, the expansion of what it means to learn and how you learn. But I think that first and foremost, it's our educators who know best and who are experts in knowing how and what we should be learning. And so we rely on them to really make sure that we're moving you forward in ways that are both educating you with what you need to know, but also that are culturally responsive to the moment we're in, and making sure that we are teaching kids really important skills. So I think one of the things that's really important to me is that even in our youngest kids, we're teaching them to be open, to not hate, right? To understand different cultures. Many of our schools in our district are no place for hate schools through the ADL. I think that kind of programming is so critical to raising the kind of kids that California needs to be open and inclusive and provide the future that we need for every Californian, no matter where you come from or what you look like.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Oh, that's all the questions, I guess. Look at me, I'm like, what's the next question, Seena? But no, so thank you guys for being here. Thank you for all these questions. I want to thank especially our students who are here, Seena, Juliet, Mikail, and Hari, for asking the questions on behalf of all the students of the district. But please be in touch. You know, we have these opportunities for you to hear a little bit about what we're doing and what I'm thinking. I represent each and every one of you. But I want to close by saying a couple of things. One is, remember, you can register to vote at 16 years of age, although you can't vote till you're 18. So make sure to register and always vote, because guess what? You get to decide who represents you, whether I'm representing you in the way you want, whether you want someone different. And that matters. That matters to your future, what our state looks like, what our country looks like, and you can be engaged in that process. So make sure you register and make sure you always vote. And for most of you, 16 and up, you can already register. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and go to the website and make sure to do it. Secretary of State will allow you to do that online. And thank you for attending. I know this is finals and AP time, but you engaging in your community and caring about what happens is amazing to me. It lights me up, it keeps me going, and it makes me remember why I do this work, because I really do focus every day on making sure that your future is bright, that you have air, water, and a land you can live in that is safe and habitable. Seems so basic, but it's such critical work, that you're not facing incredible college loans. This is the kind of work you should be demanding of your representatives and making sure we're doing. So keep it up, keep engaging. And if I didn't answer your question, please reach out. We're always here to answer your questions and support you in any way. And maybe you'll get to chat with one of our wonderful externs. So thanks for being here.